Stephen Hill, how is the Uber economy, as you call it, giving American workers a raw deal?
Well, there's something good about a lot of these gig economy technologies at their core, but the way they're being used right now, I mean, for example, Uber drivers, what we know now based on Uber's own numbers are that these jobs are very part-time. Most drivers are driving 15 hours or less, very temporary. So they're really, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of drivers for this book, and the interesting thing is the drivers who are driving it the most and trying to make a full-time living, they're the least happy. Those who are doing it just part-time for a little bit of extra money, they don't mind doing it until they've experienced a couple of Uber's wage cuts, which comes on a regular basis, and suddenly they say, in fact, Uber's numbers show that most of them last a year and then they move on.
Let's talk about some different numbers. Every month on Wall Street, we wait for the monthly employment report. Are we missing something in that data about this sharing or Uber economy?
There's a lot of dispute about that, about how big is it? Is it growing very fast? With the typical way we measure employment is through household surveys, employer surveys. But what they're missing, I think, is that the number of 1099 forms, which is the form that if you're a contractor you file with the I.R.S., those are climbing very, very fast. The number of people filing Schedule C, which is the self-employment form, those are climbing very fast. And so we're not really, I don't think we're capturing accurately what's going on in this industry, in this gig economy.
Is it creating a widening of the inequality we keep hearing about?
Well, that widening occurred after the 2008 crash. So whether or not this is contributing to that, I think it's still too early to tell. But what it is contributing to is the loss of the types of jobs that have things like safety nets, any type of job security. I'll give you an example. Like, say you're working for TaskRabbit or some of these other gig economy companies. With the old days, you used to have a job and you go to work and you work for that employer, and the time you spent at a meeting or preparing a study or whatever, or even hanging around the water cooler and talking with your fellow employees, it was all paid time. Now you're only paid for the time you're on task doing that exact thing, and the time running from gig to gig, the time finding the next gig, that's no longer paid time. That's on your time and dime, and that's a huge shift in how we're going to regard the workforce.
On the flip side,
it's kind of piecework.
Is it more of an entrepreneurial society? I mean, you are setting your own hours, you're doing your own thing. You don't have the boss barking at you when you're at the water cooler.
Well, that's certainly how it's being sold, that somehow you are your own CEO, as some like to say. And sure, if it's working for you and you have that flexibility and it's nice, that's great. But the idea that somehow these jobs are going to replace the jobs that we lost as a result of the economic crash in 2008, 2009, it's just not real world. And in the meantime, these jobs are not as flexible as they like to portray them as. Uber just cut off its platform, over 300 drivers in Los Angeles, because their acceptance rate, accepting certain passengers who have low ratings, was too low, and so Uber cut them off. And with some of these other TaskRabbit and the others, if you don't complete jobs fast enough, they will cut you off their platform. So you don't have a lot of you don't have, as a worker, you don't have a lot of leverage there.
But on the other hand, you look at taxis in New York City, and that medallion is awfully expensive, and most drivers don't own those medallions. And they got to keep driving when gas prices are high, gas prices are low. So the flip side's not that great either.
Exactly, it's true, and that's why look, it's better than sitting on your couch not making any money, for sure. But the reality is that for a lot of these drivers, they have to pay for their own gas and their own tolls and everything. So when you see the numbers from Uber that they put out about how much these drivers make, they're not taking into account. I mean, the estimates are drivers are spending anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 per year just for their expenses, and taxis do too. So it's just these are not the greatest of jobs to begin with.
Right, but you can't slow technology. So it seems as though on Wall Street you have robo-advisors, now you have robo-lawyers, robo-journalists right behind me.
Right.
So
my book does talk about that, like robo-traders on Wall Street, absolutely.
So what's the solution? Because technology just keeps moving forward.
Right. Well, I think the solution that I propose anyway is that we're going from a world where everyone used to get their new deal, their safety net from a single employer who they worked for many years. Now, many workers work for multiple employers. So we have to figure out a way how to help workers cope with this multi-employer world. And so what I proposed is that we would have a system where every employer would pay a little bit more beyond their wage, not a lot, but just maybe a couple dollars per hour more, into an account for that worker that is prorated to the number of hours that worker worked for you. So if that worker works for you part-time, half-time, you'd pay just that number of hours. If you're an Uber driver and you drive for them 15 hours a week, Uber would pay a little bit that corresponds to that number of hours worked. And then the worker would be able to use that individual security account, as I call it, to purchase their to put money into Social Security, Medicare, to get their health care, maybe a little bit for paid sick leave, paid vacations, these sorts of things. So I think that we can do this, and other places around the world are doing this sort of thing. It's basically creating legal parity between all these different classifications of workers so that workers have a little bit of a safety net there. I think that would be good for not only the workers, but for the broader economy, because the problem we could run into is if not enough people have enough money in their pockets to buy up all the goods and services that our businesses are producing, then the economy starts to tank because 70% of the economy is driven by consumer spending.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Stephen.
It's my pleasure, Greg. Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for watching The Street.